Okay. Hello, Miss Juana, ¿y estás? This time I will talk about the topic that I like, the MES class. The topic is about the legal aspect that all my SME that operate legally in a country must comply. When talking about legal aspect, permit and license, registration, and so on. One of the great unknowns that exist in relation to MCMEs is whether they must pay them comply with all the requirements to 100%. Has do large company, and the answer is yes. The answer is yes because a micro, small, and medium-sized company must comply with all the law of each country require, be it fiscal or labor. What differ is that in the case of the fiscal ones, the percentage varies. So it is a micro to a big company, but in the part of the permits as license, they have to pay the same as a big company. Later, what we must do so that a company that commercializes its product is operating legally according to the law. The number one is to be legally constituted, and this is known as establishing a legal form. Number two, a series of permits, registration and license that should be paid for and complied with. And number three, and they are already operating and they must be up to today with the fiscal obligations. More details about them later. And finally, number four will be the labor obligation as an employer, which thinks I must comply with my employees to be in accordance with the law. So these are the four legal aspects that all me as me is must comply with in order to operate legally in any country. Okay, the first one is legal or juridical obligations. In all our countries, by law, when a person or a company wishes to commercialize or operate in a certain market, it must comply with the laws. Um, one, one of them is to have a form or a legally personality. Then to be able to comply with this process must do a series of procedures. In some countries, the company can do the process individually, but in other occasions, the law is more convenient to hire commercial lawyers to take charge of this process because they know it and do it faster. The second is that we as entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs must define what is the career or the specific activity whose company is going to exercise, if it is a food distribution company or is a food processing company or is a food importing company and so on. And the number three is to establish the number of people who are going to participate as partner or owners of the company. And later we will see that depending on the type of company we decide to be, we will have a comply with a specific number according to the law of each country. And finally, number four, the operation permit. Once you are already constituted, you have to apply for an operation permit at the mayor's office or the municipality of the place where you are going to produce, commercialize, or distribute your product. So these are the four big steps to be able to establish its legal form at the moment of establishing which is the legal form with which we want to work. We are going to find that there are three very common types in all our country. The first case is when a person doesn't want or doesn't want to make partnerships with with anyone or with family or friends. Then legally that person should to be able to operate commercially should be declared a sole trader and comply with what each law specifics in each country to be able to become as such. The second option is the limited liability company or limited resources partner that we know in our countries has this type of companies have the characteristic that has a minimum of 2 or 3 partners and a maximum of 25 or 30 depending on the country where we are in this case. In case of an eventuality, the company only respond with the resource that the company has and nothing more. And number three, uh, then we have the third option, which is the joint stock company. This type of company in some countries the minimum is one, and in most of our countries it doesn't have any limited in terms of partners. The partners are owner of shares, and in this case the company operates with two boards, the board of investment partner and the administrative board, where the general manager, the operation manager, etc. Enter in case of an eventuality because these companies have greater capacity to pay compared to the number two. By permits, license, and registration. Once we have established the legal form with which we are going to operate, we must then establish or define the permits, license, and registration that a company that sells food in the different cities should have. In this session, we have the foremost common special permits or in our countries. So as we said at the beginning, we must obtain an operating permit from the city hall of the municipality of our country in the region where we are working. Okay. The sanitary license certifies the premise where food X is begun, processed, marketed, or distributed from the point of view of safety. We know that there is really no risk that could affect to the safety of that food. The second is the sanitary records. The sanitary records are placed on the product packaging, and what is certifying me is that this product was evaluated from a physical, chemical, and microbiological point of view, and it has been proven proven that it it is not really harmful to the consumer health. These first two are take out in the public health secretary of each region. The third is no has environmental audits or license. So in this case, it goes to the Secretary of Natural Resource and verifies that either the marketing, distribution, or processing process is a process that doesn't harm the environment, that is doesn't have physical chemical residues that could be affecting the soil, air, and water. Then we have the records of the Ministry of the Agriculture, which in this case of Honduras is the SAC, and they use an establishment permit to any premises that processes food. So these are the four most important special permits that a company that is going to commercialize product or process product should be taking into account in order to be in accordance with the law. Tax obligations. Let's move on the third legal aspect that we would like to study. About MEs, and that is the compliance with tax obligation, which may vary in each country. So let's see which are the tax obligations that every company should be compliant with, regardless of the size of the company it is. Number one, the company has to look for its RTM. It is the National Tax Registry, and it is nothing more than a code or a classification that they give you, and that place you in a certain range to be able to pay your tax obligation. The sales tax is a percentage that is paid on the total sales that a company or a person or a business has. So in the case of Honduras, it's 15%, and other have 13% or 14. It is very variable according to the laws of each country. The second income tax, in the case of income tax, is a percentage that can reach up to 25%. The income includes not only the income that you can have for salaries, but also for sales of some service, or for consultants, or the rent of a real estate, or the sale of a land. Then on that income that person has in the year, you have to pay to income tax. And as I said, in some countries the income tax is the same as the income tax. uh, there is another series of tax the same as the income tax. There is another series of tax, such as the case of the neighborhood taxes, where according to the income or the work activity of the person, percentage is calculated the most be paid to the municipality. The other is the real estate tax, that must be paid for each of the goods tax, of the goods that the person or company has, whether is a building or a land, and that depends of each country. Employer or labor obligation. Finally, we studied the labor obligation or employer obligations as they are known in other countries, and that regardless of whether we are a large or a small company, we must comply with them. The most common is the payment of social security. In the case of the payment of social security, the company or the employer has the obligation to pay higher percent based of the salary that person receives, and the employee must pay a lower percentage in obligation in order to receive that social security service or medicine or free medical attention. The second, at least the athletes here in Honduras, is known as the Private Contribution System, RAP, and it is a payment that was created with the idea of forcing people to have to save in order to be eligible for certain loans such as housing loans or home modifications. This system is the same as the previous one. One part is paid by the employer and the other part is obligation of the employee to cover it, and the percentage are again variably according to each country in the case of Honduras. The third one is known as the percentage of payment of the INFOP, which is the National Institute of Professional Trading. All the companies have obligation to pay a minimum percentage that can be up to 3%. In some case, the percentage is paid by based of the salary of the person and is given to this institute, and this institute has the obligation to provide training according to the category of the company to the employees. Then has a company pays that percentage, the company has the right to ask this institute to train its personnel in a certain topic that the company is interested in. These are like the three big ones in terms of labor obligations. But we can't leave aside the other labor obligations such as vacation pay, maternity pay for pre and postnatal maternity for women, leave for people who are grieving the loss of family members, and in the case of some countries, a school bonus is given at the beginning of the year to help their employees with the start of school for their children. And in the case of Honduras, the payment of the Christmas bonus and the 14th, which in some case is only a single payment, but in the case of Honduras, it is two. This is all I learned in the MSME class this quarter, and thank you very much for your attention.